Hello, my name is Ray Salazar, and this is Morning Reel, a 3 to 4 to 100 minute or so podcast of films that I review of all nations, all colors, all languages, whatever time limit, from a 50-minute short film to a 3-hour feature length film such as Oppenheimer, right? Today, I am happy to talk about briefly of the film The Virgin Suicides. This is the first time I talk about a film directed by Sofia Coppola, who we all know is the daughter of the GOAT, or one of the GOATs, Francis Ford Coppola, or Coppola. I like to say Coppola. This film, The Virgin Suicides, came out in 1999. It's an American psychological romantic drama film. It's almost a coming of age film in some sort of weird way, except that there's, suicide in it. Yeah, kind of weird, right? But it's definitely a high school film. This film was shot in the late 90s, 1998 if I'm not mistaken. This film takes place in the 70s. Not a lot of people know this, but this film is based on the 1993 novel by Jeffrey Eugenides, which is hilarious because I actually own the novel and I've actually read the novel. I didn't read it before watching the film. In fact, I didn't even know it came out of a book. And right now I'm actually sitting with the book in front of me because I remember buying it at a Goodwill for like, I don't know, $2. Great shape, paperback, obviously. To briefly talk about the book, it's a good book. You should read it. It's a short story. Sofia Coppola did a pretty good job matching her film to the book. It really does justice because the book itself is very descriptive. In the film, you see a lot of double exposure, or rather like one scene fading into another scene, right? And it's those fades where it feels like a double exposure. And I like how Sofia Coppola uses the close-up of the girls, the lesbian sisters, as the double exposure for other stuff that is fading into that. Pretty cool stuff. But yeah, good book. Definitely read it. That's me setting the book down. Definitely read the book. She does justice to it, and which is primarily why I like the film. And I'm not judging the film, or rather, I'm not critiquing the film based off the book. I'm critiquing the film based off what I saw. Now, just to put it very simple, this is Sofia Coppola's first film, her debut feature-length film. This film is produced by Francis Ford Coppola, Julie Costanzo, Chris Hanley, and Dan Halstead, starring James Woods, for the first time not playing a creep, Kathleen Turner, Kirsten Dunst, Josh Hartnett. Josh Hartnett, when he's like a freaking teen, dude. Like, he looks like a teen in this film. Like, he the cast isn't bad, dude. It's a good cast. Scott Glenn, Michael Paré, or Michael Pear, Jonathan Tucker, and Danny DeVito, who plays a doctor, right? Or rather, like a psychologist of sorts. And his couple of minutes in the film is pretty freaking good. You know, it's not like a Danny DeVito the performance, right? But some type of mannerisms that he brings out into the scene with one of the lesbian sisters, the youngest one rather. It's short, straight to the point. Cinematography, Edward Lockman. Edited by James Lyons and Melissa Kent. Music by the group called Air. You might have known who this band is. Production company is Paramount, American Zoetrope, Muse Productions, Eternity Pictures. Distributed by Paramount Pictures. This film came out in 1999 at Cannes, and later came out, wow, check this out, May 19th, 1999 at Cannes Film Festival, and then it came out in the United States on April 21st, 2000. Budget of $6.1 million and a box office of $10.4 million, which is considered a good gross. This film deals with a lot of personalities, even though it centers on certain characters, right? It's hard for one person to basically show all kinds of characters on screen equally, and that's kind of hard to do. This film doesn't do it so equally. This is about a family, mom and dad, 5 girls, and they live in a very strict household, a very religious Christian, well, which looks Christian. And these girls, these lesbian sisters, they're very close, obviously. I think they all live in one room, which is pretty wild, or maybe 2 rooms. I'm not sure, or different rooms. I'm not sure. I don't know. It's not very specific, even though there are some scenes that show that these sisters have their own rooms for the most part. Not important, but it does show a dynamic that even though that these girls at the end of the day have their own rooms, they have a strong bond. They're always together, and it's not because they want to be together. It's because not that they have to be together. They want to be together, and that's great. Shows good dynamic. The mom, for the most part, is just like very overprotective. She's the classic example of a somewhat of a helicopter parent, I guess. Now we see in the film that these parents do want to give these girls freedom, liberty, especially suggested by a therapist or psychologist rather. It's apparent that these parents do love their children. Maybe they don't know how to love them the way they needed to be loved or whatnot. One of the girls suicides, takes her own life, and from that moment everything mostly seems that it's on lockdown for these girls, man. Like they can't have a life outside of their own home. And at some point they can't have a life outside of their own home. That's the only life that they can get. No matter what you can do, right? You can never keep your kid in the cage, man. Your kid, a kid needs to develop, and develop into a teenager, and then developed into an adult, middle-aged adult, then an old person. It's gonna happen. But if you cage this person, if you try to close the windows on this person, not let this person experience life, even though life can be shit sometimes, it's very important for that person to have just an experience of life. You can do so much to try to control like your surroundings, and you can only do so much to influence a child, right? But at the end of the day, there's going to be a point where that child's going to have a mind of its own, an identity of its own, and he or she or they are going to do whatever they fucking want, and you kind of just gotta live through it, whether you support it or not, depending what goes down. And the film deals with that. These lesbian sisters, they're good kids, man. They are. But you can tell, though, the hormones. You can tell that they're entering adolescence, They're not that innocent no more, I mean, collectively, they're not. Especially witnessing their own sister's death. At that point, all the innocence goes out the window. It is shown. And I love the fact that Sofia Coppola shows us, like, how this film moves. Is very descriptive as far as its camera. She finds all kinds of ways to tell us the development of these women as far as like how they go through this story. There's a dinner scene, right, with the family, and they invite some of the boys over, some like school kids. School kids come over, they all have dinner, they sit on the table. Then the next thing you know, like, while they're having dinner, one of the sisters trying to feel up against the dude, man. And I mean, what could you do right across from a table and you have your parents around and all that crap, which is already pressure as it is when you're a freaking teen with all these hormones and all that stuff. And then next thing you know, you get a foot felt up on you against your leg, and next thing you know, it's going higher to your thighs, and then boom, to your junk. And you got parents right there, dude. It's crazy. You can tell that these girls are like, they want to kind of explore who they are, and it would sound messed up to say, well, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. But in the story, especially how these girls are kind of cooped up in there, like, I don't know, that's just the thing that we're looking at. We're looking at these girls trying to, like, trying to like figure out what their sexuality is, man, because everything else is gone. Like they can't hear their music, they can't watch TV. I don't think they can even like write letters to anybody else. They have no contact outside the world. The only thing they got is themselves. And honestly, that's all they got. Just their own physical. I mean, they got each other, right? The sisters got all each other and all that stuff. They support one another. They sort of depend on one another. But what they really have at the end of the day is their own selves. And that's all they can just explore. I guess their bodies, and it's crazy. Even like the thought of that, like all they have is their own bodies to explore, to try to understand. When you don't have nothing like to kind of like influence them or to guide them in a way as to where, like, why am I thinking like this? Why am I having these thoughts? It's important for like anybody to kind of, to figure out who they are through like other people or other types of like mediums, or other types of like information about like your own self. If you're going to take that away from somebody, you're not going to have a good development into their adolescence and later yet into their adulthood. And this film speaks for itself, and it's a very simple film too. It's a very freaking simple film, and it just really deals with like how these girls go on with their lives after witnessing a death. No, not witnessing a death, but like just, well, yeah, it's not that they saw the fall, but they saw what happened. Like they saw how it ended for their sister. And I mean, it's tragic. It really is tragic. Coppola does a good job exploring women, trying to figure out who they are, Great cast. You got these like high school dudes who are your typical high school dudes, and like a lot of them have different personalities, but at the same time it's not that they're all the same, but like, I mean, you're a high schooler in the 70s, and for the first time you're noticing the opposite sex, and you're noticing them for certain things, things that you never thought you would notice, and it's there. And these guys were obsessed with the sisters. They wanted to figure out exactly what happened, because it's not like it's a murder mystery or anything like that, but it's crazy how the story of these sisters ended how it ended. And it's a love story too, like it's a love story, and love is never innocent at the end of the day. It's almost a taboo subject. It's a boundary that's broken, especially when you're a pre-adolescent or adolescent. You're breaking barriers. You're breaking your own like world. You're breaking like your mentality in a sense. Because you're trying to figure out exactly what love is at fucking 14 to 18. Like you don't know shit. You think you know shit, but you only know so much. And Coppola did a good job at displaying that type of adolescent mindset of love, and it's a very raw type of love too, because your first love is the one that hurts the most, supposedly, right? Shit. In this film, love can drive you to death, and it's never pretty, but it's always poetic. Sofia Coppola did a good job establishing a film of women, or women trying to be women, whenever, especially when they don't know it yet. But the fact that they are doing it just out of their own nature is already on the course of being a woman. At least that's my definition of it. I don't know. She plays a good job of it as showing like certain motifs, certain close-ups. She shows us the girls like experience life, sadness, grief, laughter, and happiness. And some of that sometimes, like much like life, that shit gets taken away. You can be happy for one night, and in the morning when your John is gone, it's like your world has changed and it went upside down, and you don't know if it's still upside down. My name is Ray Salazar. Follow me at Morning Shot Films, IG and YouTube. Check out my website, morningshotfilms.co, where I put this podcast out. And I got merch too. I got hats, pins, shirts. Check them out. There's always something that somebody's going to like. Rate and review this podcast. I'm on YouTube, Spreaker, iHeart, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, which is pretty popular. I give this film honestly, 3.5 out of 4 tokes. And the reason why I give 3.5 out of 4, I guess the only con I would have is just that even though even though this film is about these 5 women, and we have different types of personalities from each one, I wish that Coppola could have focused on all of them in a more equal fashion. I get it. Kirsten Dunst, she's always going to be the star in this film. We center most of our attention to her. The story it's not really from her point of view. It's crazy. It's the point of view out of the boys, right? But then again, one of the boys is the narrator, right? And it's funny how it goes back between like what we see and then what is the future with some of these folks, and how they express love and how they long for that love, and how they even still think about that first time, and that's very poetic in the sense that like you never forget your first time, whether it was good or bad. And it's crazy how humans are so complicated, how like something that happened just a long time ago, when you think about it, it just feels like if it just happened yesterday or 2 hours ago. And when you watch this film, it sort of makes you think of your first time. It sort of makes you think about your development as a person, especially back in those times when you were a teen. And it's not supposed to question your, how you grew up, but then again, it focuses more on like, what can you do now? Thank you.